Hello and welcome to visitors from Beat Tech 20 and our regular viewers from Farmers Weekly as well. Now it's February, we're looking back at January, we saw very few frosts. In fact, for some places it was near record low levels of ground and air frost through the month as well. And looking back at the changing climate of East Anglia to start off this week's video, this graph here, or these three graphs for different variables, are looking back at the last 30 years, so 1990 to 2019, compared to the 30 years prior to that. So they don't overlap, it's one block of 30 years followed by another, just showing the change of the climate over East Anglia. Now from a temperature perspective, overall the annual mean temperatures have gone up by about 1 degree already in the last 30 years. And you can see that broken down by month. The biggest changes, generally speaking, are around sort of February, March time, and again another spike sometime in the middle of summer as well. From a sunshine perspective, all months are now sunnier than average except June, which has actually gone down slightly as well. So interestingly, we're getting warmer, we're getting sunnier, and from a rainfall perspective, February has got quite wet in recent years, and it looks like we'll buck that trend going forward in the next few weeks. But March and April, notice they've become much drier as well as warmer as well, which means frosts have become a bit fewer and further between in the spring months, for example. And indeed, the autumn, October and November, also seeing an increase in rainfall as well. Now, interestingly, June here is wetter than it used to be. It's also duller than it used to be as well. So overall, June has got cloudier and wetter compared to the past, whereas many other months have seen an increase in sunshine and indeed temperature as well. Now, right now, we're in a slightly colder phase of weather. We talked about it last week, of course. High pressure's been building in. Here's the jet stream picture, the high pressure building in here in this sort of omega block, as we call it. The jet stream following the shape of the Greek letter omega. And that means things are going to be settled for the next few days. A lot of dry weather, a return to overnight frost, so it's getting a bit colder, mostly dry with some fog patches around as well. It only lasts for a few days though, because later on in the week, as we indicated last week, the jet stream will start waking up. It's going to be pushing that block away, and instead a very active jet stream coming out from the eastern seaboard of the US, powering up to 250 miles an hour high up in the atmosphere. And this will be driving deep areas of low pressure in across the UK by the weekend and beyond into next week as well. And the reason for that, well, there's a big plunge of cold air coming out of Arctic Canada across the eastern side of the US this week. And that then will strengthen that temperature contrast either side of the jet stream, strengthening the jet stream itself as it comes out across the Atlantic. Now, the other thing we have to bear in mind is little kinks in the jet stream, such as this little trough here, another one out over the western side of the US. These will swing through in the upper pattern and will potentially develop some rather vicious areas of low pressure late this weekend and then on into next week as well. But these features haven't even yet developed. So until we've got an idea on how they're developing over the US, the forecast will keep chopping and changing for next week in terms of the site-specific detail day by day. For the time being, we'll stick with this week and the things we do know, and that is high pressure is over the UK, right over the UK here. And under high pressure, we of course have light winds, so we'll have some fog, which could be quite slow to clear in some places over the next few days. Quite a widespread frost as well. A bit more cloud, a bit more breeze in northern Scotland. Here the flow is actually coming in off the Atlantic, but elsewhere it's fairly chilly, although daytime temperatures should be close to average for the time of the year. Now, gradually with time, the high will drift just a little bit further east as we go through the next couple of days. So by Friday, the high is centred east of the UK. We're starting to get more of a southerly flow, so temperatures will gradually start to recover a touch, a bit more breeze around as well. And actually by Friday, we're starting to see some weak fronts coming into western parts of the UK. So here a little bit of patchy rain perhaps on Friday, but still, even at this stage, many of us will have had 2, 3, maybe even 4 dry days in a row. So good for getting out and about on the fields over the next couple of days. And then beyond that into the weekend, we're starting to see things breaking down. So the high pressure continues to move away, low pressure then coming in. The first front coming in on Saturday, weakening as it does so. The next front coming in Saturday night into Sunday. This will have more energy with it. So wind and rain coming in, and you can see by Sunday a very deep area of low pressure to the north of the UK. A lot of isobars right across the UK means widespread strong winds, and we could well see some disruption across parts of the UK too. On top of that, a very long fetch of westerly winds right across the Atlantic means there could be some pretty big waves around the coast as well. So quite a stormy end to the weekend, and that really will be the theme into next week as well. Now that first area of low pressure will move out of the way during Sunday. This is the picture then for early next week. We've still got a lot of isobars even over the UK. So we're not talking about just a few hours of windy weather. We're talking about a protracted period of 5 to 7 days of strong winds that could cause some disruption in various waves through that time frame. So northwesterly winds across the UK. And actually, this is very cold air that's spilling out of Canada, racing across the Atlantic. Because of those strong winds, it's becoming modified somewhat by the warm waters of the Atlantic, but not as much as it would have done had the winds been not as strong. So some pretty cold air coming in across the UK, plenty of showers then affecting northern and western parts, but occasionally they will feed further inland, further east, as we get organised features coming in that flow as well. So some snow on the hills in the north, perhaps down to low levels at times in the heaviest showers. And if we get the odd organised feature coming through, particularly on Monday, for example, then it's not out of the question we might see just a little bit of wet snow across some southern parts of the UK as well. But it will be fast moving, the sun will come back out and probably melt anything that happens to accumulate anyway. And then towards the middle of next week, well, we're keeping a very close eye on this feature. So this is a situation early in the week, another deep area of low pressure, and that could also be picked up and deepened by the jet stream to be somewhere close to the UK late Tuesday into the first part of Wednesday. Now, as I said, there's a lot of uncertainty at this stage as to exactly how this will develop, where it will go, and therefore the type of impact we might see from it. But in general, ensemble data is suggesting a peak in the winds on Sunday across the UK, and again late Tuesday night into early Wednesday, which will be with this feature. You can see the number of isobars here with that a spell of heavy rain and again some hill snow in the north, before again we go back into a run of colder northwesterly winds behind each area of low pressure. So you get the idea. It's a very turbulent spell of weather coming up from this weekend onwards, with various low pressures coming in, wind and rain with that as well. Just to show you that a little bit more detail, this is the ensemble data for Reading. You can see the wind speeds down here on the left-hand side, the time of the forecast going forward in time along the top here. So with that high pressure building in the next couple of days, the winds falling very light. There's pretty good confidence of light winds for the next couple of days. So good for spraying if you're trying to get out and about and do that over the next few days. And then the winds pick up through the weekend. You can see this peak here on Sunday. Again, there's quite a bit of spread as to exactly how strong those winds will be, but these are the mean speeds for the whole day. So gusts could be as much as, say, double these values potentially through the weekend. And you can see the second peak showing up here on Wednesday. But even still, it's pretty windy through Monday, Tuesday, and into next Thursday as well. It's just that the strongest of all the winds Sunday and probably sometime Tuesday night, early Wednesday. So keeping an eye on that. But the idea is if you are trying to spray, you've got a couple of days here, but after that it's going to be pretty tricky because it will be pretty windy for a very long period of time until probably the end of next week as things are currently looking. So to keep on top of all of that information, including that ensemble data, you can just visit the Weatherquest portal. There's plenty of information here, including those tables I've just shown you, but also a full and detailed hour by hour 4 to 7 day forecast. We've also got jet stream images, so you can keep an eye and track that very strong jet coming out of Canada with some forecaster commentary as well. And of course, we've got this forecast, this monthly forecast, but in written format with much more detail as to the expected conditions over the next 4 weeks. There's a free 7-day trial, so if you're interested, you can just send us an email, info@weatherquest.co.uk, and we'll set you up with a trial and you can see all the information that we have on offer on the Weatherquest portal. Now, across Europe for next week, now this is a very strong signal. This blue area here, that's where pressure is lower than normal for the time of the year, and equally the red indicating the pressure is higher than normal for the time of the year. And a very strong signal here for low pressures to dominate across much of northern Europe. Westerly winds then coming in off the Atlantic means it will be relatively mild. As I say, there will be some cold air on the back side of each low coming in, but on the forward side we will get some fairly warm air being drawn in as well. So temperature traces for next week will be up and down like a yo-yo as each area of low pressure comes in. But because it's off the Atlantic, it is generally speaking mild. There's no sign at the moment of any major cold outbreak across Eastern Europe or Western Russia, as you sometimes get at this time of the year. So while it's still cold here, it's all relative speaking. Temperatures are well above where they should be, and they have been all winter long across Scandinavia and across parts of Russia as well. Some chilly conditions potentially down in Turkey, but that's about it really as things currently stand. And this clearly shows where the areas of low pressure are, with above average or even in some places well above average rainfall here across a good chunk of Europe. Some snow on the hills as well, especially across Scandinavia, but even the Alps will probably get quite a bit of snow through this spell as well, with that cold air coming in on the backside of each area of low pressure. And really it's just these southern parts of Europe where you're closer to that higher pressure that things are actually drier than normal for the time of the year. Heading through mid-February, there are signs that things might start to very gradually calm down. Notice the high pressure to the south, the anomaly, is shifting further north or expanding further north. So that implies that areas of low pressure may become a bit less frequent, especially across southern parts of the UK, things becoming drier than wet as we go through the middle part of February. Not completely dry, the main high probably still to the south of us at this stage, so we'll still see fronts coming in, but generally speaking, temperatures above average across most of Europe once again, especially in the east. And in terms of rainfall, notice these dry anomalies creeping a bit further north across France, getting just about into southern parts of the UK. So not necessarily completely dry, but drier than it will have been in the week before that. But I still think we could see a little bit of rain here and there. But most of the rain will generally become a bit more shifted up towards the north of the UK. And then as we head through the latter part of February into the very beginning of March, that high pressure building much more across Europe, including the UK. So signs are at the moment things will probably settle down even more actually later on in February. This is how the temperatures look, of course, with that high pressure building in. The mild signal is not as strong because it could actually end up with some pretty chilly nights and we'll return to frost, maybe some fog as well, and that may have a bit of a dent on our temperatures. So not necessarily mild, depending on how much cloud, fog and frost we see, but still a fairly strong signal here for above average temperatures across Eastern Europe and Western Russia once more. And again, the dry signal is fairly widespread through this week as well. Notice though, northwest Scotland, on the edge of that high, still getting into some wetter conditions here compared to average for the time of the year. So this is how things are looking, settled over the next few days with overnight frost and patchy fog, becoming mild by this weekend, but with that we are going to see some wind and rain. And as I say, next week, Sunday through into next week, looking very unsettled with rain, strong winds at times, big waves around the coast, and indeed some snow, mainly on northern hills, but perhaps briefly to lower levels, and then perhaps becoming a bit more settled late in the month, sort of around the 20th onwards really, towards the latter part of February. A lot of weather going on then over the next few days. We'd love to hear what you're trying to do on the fields at the moment. You can contact us as ever by following us on social media.